We're live.
Hello, everybody out there out in the ether. Welcome to the Delicious Recipe with your host, the Dell, on UPRN Talk Radio. And tonight's episode we're going to call Assorted Veg. And I guess it goes along with that whole part of trying to stay out of that vegetative state while we're sort of locked down in this COVID 19 quarantine or self isolation. And well, I know with here in Ontario, they keep on changing more and more restrictions that seem to be going on. They just had the Premier of Ontario uh, give sort of an update on things about more infections happening in Ontario. And you got to figure, well, Ontario is actually a pretty large space up here in Canada. And where I am, I'm up in northern Ontario. And so, like, I looked it up there, what Ontario is, if you put it in comparison. It's bigger than Texas, anyways. Like, Texas is about 270,000 square miles, and Ontario is about 415,000 square miles. So almost over than half than what it is there, or not as half, but about a third bigger anyways, but a large area, and majority of the population for Ontario is mostly down in the southeast part of Ontario, whereas northern is probably like maybe about at 1/10, maybe even less than that, the population. So a lot of restrictions and a lot of rules that happen here in where I am up here in Thunder Bay, Northern Ontario. We're over Lake Superior, and if you're aware where that is, if you're from the States, we're about 3.5 hours north of Duluth, Minnesota, or about 7 hours north of Minneapolis and Minneapolis, St. Paul, and right on the edge of Lake Superior. And with the population, a lot of stuff that happens, and this always happens any time of the year, whether there's a virus or not a virus or anything. Usually, a lot of stuff that happens down in Southern Ontario affects us by their rulings and that, even though we're totally almost like two separate entities in one province. Like we're deciduous, or they're deciduous forest, and we're coniferous up here, and we're not that far away, like as in, I guess you'd say, latitude goes. But totally different population structure, and we're a lot more spread out here and not as compact like Toronto is, and the rest of the Golden Horseshoe down there. And so more restrictions, a lot of more things are happening down there because you have that larger population uh, being close to each other. So this virus, COVID-19, seems to be affecting the population more. And I'm not sure if I did this on this show, or maybe I might have posted it on one of my pages, social media pages there, about it. It explained a lot about showing how sickness can pass and when you're in congested areas, and how important isolation and moving of travel uh, uh, helps sort of contain uh, the spread of a virus, right? So the least you move out, or at least you move around and you contract with the rest of your neighbors or the population of the city, town, or whatever you're in, the less likely you are to pick it up. Because with this, I guess, not I guess, but what is said is that this is a highly contagious, and everybody's susceptible to it. And so if you're out walking your dog, there's a lot of things. Uh, just don't think that you're safe out there if your dog's running around with other people with their dogs, because it is sort of a touch sensitive disease that they say. So when you have your dog and it's running around with somebody who's touched their dog and coughed on it on the collar or whatever, and your dog runs over and touches that dog and it comes back and jumps all over you, there's a importance there to be keeping clean and safe, and just things to sort of remember. And just in past with our up here in Canada with our premier, our prime minister, and then the premier of Ontario have sort of said is to keep this isolation and keep this sort of self isolation and your movement to a minimum. going out and getting your groceries and stuff like that, important. But this will come in part with something else that I got. We'll go on this. I have a few things that we'll go through there today. What I've been doing. One of them there is this guy. If you're watching guitar, picking that up again, and playing around with that. And watching lots of movies and other channels and following other websites, and like what I do most of the time here, and writing down lots of stuff for ideas for shows and information. That's the sort of thing. Like there'll be I'll mention other things that we can do, or that you can do as well, to sort of break the monotony and pick up some things that you might not have done for a while. But I just an interesting fact though. I'd also mentioned this, and I got actually a lot of I got some blowback on it. But what I was putting in there was a comparison to what the stats are right now, and with this COVID-19. And if I look on the page that I have up here, this is that Roy Lab stats. And one thing there is that you got to discount China pretty much now, because China hasn't really reported anything, period, in a few weeks, I guess. So, and whether their numbers were right or wrong, it's we don't know. But like China's pretty much stagnated at 81,000 cases, and have moved down, where the U.S. has moved up to 163,000. So globally right now, we have people that are sick. We don't really actually know what the true number is that, but we do know that 702,000, and it keeps rising a bit, have all tested to be sick with this COVID-19. And total, what this is showing here is 37,854 deaths have occurred, and that's globally. So whether those statistic numbers are correct or up to date, it's just saying that it's up to date. But like I said, with China and some of those places over there not fully reporting, and some of the other, would you say, third world countries, I guess, whether those numbers are up to date. But I was looking at it about what was happening with the flu and this is where I got into a little bit of trouble with, or whatever, from some social media people that out of my friends list there, is that I was comparing this to the flu, and I'm not comparing this to the flu. I'm just comparing this to the previous seasons that the flu had happened. So the CDC, and this was in you can look this up on YouTube, and it was from a Time magazine article, and it said the CDC reported in 2017 to 2018 with the flu, 48.8 million people got sick with the flu. 959,000 were hospitalized. Now I'm believing that this is worldwide, but I wasn't able to ascertain that. But I think it might probably is worldwide. I don't think it's just North America, because let's see them off. But if it is, then this is these numbers are way off. So what do we have there? So 4.8 million people sick in 2017 and 2018. Hospitalized was almost just under 1 million people were hospitalized, and 79,400 people died from the flu. And that's from 27 to 2018 flu season. And the following year, the 18 into 19 flu season, there was 42.9 million people got sick with the flu. 647,000 were hospitalized, and 61,200 were dead from the flu. So if you're looking at those numbers there for what the flu did into what we have right now, so you're looking at 80,000, 60,000. Then with COVID-19 to date, it's around 37,000. So we're a lot less than what's happened to the flu so far. So that happens annually. That happens every year. So I guess with maybe the whole thing is with this getting on this thing right away, and restricting things has kept the numbers sort of a little bit in check. Whereas you got to look at it, I guess when I was mentioned it about a couple of weeks ago, about that there's a potential that this can get way worse than what it is, and we're sort of seeing that right now. I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was mentioned on a couple of doctor sites, and that is that the U.S. And Canada Canada's probably about 2 weeks behind the U.S., and the U.S. was about 4 weeks behind Italy, and like Italy was way up onto the list or up near the top, and I think the United States was like around eighth or ninth place, and now U.S. is up at the number one position there for the most amount of cases, and so what do we have to look forward to going on here is that hopefully we've put enough restrictions or whatever, or the government has put restrictions on the population here and even in Canada, restricting movement, and hopefully that this will pass in the coming months. Like I think quarantine, I think is supposed to still go on till the end of April, but those days keep on going longer and longer. And it's been reported before is that this is going to go in waves. That the original people that have gotten sick, and then there could be another wave following that, and just people that haven't been paying attention, I guess, in a way, and have passing around to other people. So a part of the news program, or the part from the Premier of Ontario, I believe his name is Doug Ford, reported that over the weekend time is that a lot of people, because of the nice weather, and now we're coming into spring, is a lot of people are going outside, walking their dogs, or going out for walks, getting some fresh air, because they're getting that sort of that cabin fever of being stuck at home. And with that, I guess it's been noted that a lot of people aren't sort of following this safe space area of, I guess, a 6 foot perimeter. They're calling for minimum, and so a lot of people are going out, and you could actually potentially be contracting it and bringing it back and infecting others in your household. So there's been a part to that, is that people to be aware that we're not through this as far as we know, so they say, and restrictions have been put on that to maintain isolation. And I think you're going to see maybe this might actually, here in even Ontario, get a little bit more government mandated in what it is. There was a news program or a report from them about a lot of people wanting to leave the city and go out to their cottages or their cottages camps, so travel away from the large metropolitan areas and go someplace safe and go and relax out there, because now that it's getting into springtime, it's time to open up camp and that. But I guess I can see both sort of arguments in this one, and like you want to go somewhere, if you're not sick, you'd like to go somewhere where you're away from sick people, but you don't know if you contracted it, and go to a smaller population where they don't have the medical facilities to handle this influx of people leaving the city, and the potential danger of passing this and spreading it further. And I can see on the other part, though, is that you want to get away from these sick people so that you don't contract it from other people. So it's sort of a little flip of a coin. And what was reported is from Southern Ontario, from the Premier, is not to go out to camp, not to leave, stay where you are. And I don't know, that gets into this whole part about mentioned on other programs about this Agenda 2030, things about bringing people into tighter units where they can do population control, and part of that conspiracy that's with that. And so whether you go out to camp or not, what's going on with that, I don't know if that's going to be, how well that's going to be enforced. But then today, a new meeting, and the Premier went away, and the whole big thing is there's going to be incentives, and for people that report others that are not obeying the isolation protocols that are put in place, which is sort of weird. So now if you're doing something and your neighbor spots you, your neighbor can call in to a number, and they listed what the number is. You can go check it out on the Canadian website or the Ontario website, and you can report violators that are violating protocols, which I found is pretty sort of interesting, where you're reporting in on your neighbors, and that sort of gets to this whole conspiracy of Big Brother is watching you, and now your neighbors are reporting on you. And I think that's a part that was already happening over in China, where they're this social credit score, and with the cameras and facial recognition and finding out where you are, and reporting what you're doing. And now we're getting to this part here in Ontario, where people will be fined for breaking these protocols that are restrictions that are put in place, and now you got to worry about your neighbors calling calling you in. So this is going to get a little bit crazier than it gets better, it seems to be. So that's going to be interesting to watch how that happens, and how that's actually going to be enforced, whether or not they're going to stop your money or whatever, and from getting these benefits. There can be lots of different things that you're going to do, but that's all just speculation just on my part. But who knows what'll happen there. So along with this topic of assorted vegetables, assorted veg, just going to basically just go through what I've been keeping myself busy there as well, what I've been doing, what I've been watching, different things I've noticed, and hopefully whatever some of these ideas, maybe you can take to heart, maybe think about them yourself. So I mentioned there beforehand about there is this restricted traveling, and you are allowed to go out and go do your shopping in that. Excuse me. And we noticed there, Laura, my wife, noticed is when she went out shopping to pick up certain items, that now that it's spring, planting season is upon us. So I've been wanting to do this for quite a while, even at the old house that we had, and do with putting in a garden and that, and never ever got around with that. And now that we moved, during just in the coming year, so it was still winter here, lots of snow. And we still have actually quite a bit of snow in our backyard. It's melted pretty much all in the front, but I still got about 1.5 feet, 2 feet in the back. I've been shoveling out and spreading out to let that sort of melt, so I can use my back patio, which is about 25 by 25 feet, I guess you could say. And so she noticed a whole bunch of planting kits available, and lots of seeds and soil really cheap on sale too. So I think she was telling me that a 5 or 10 pound bag, or I guess about the size of like a large bag of potatoes, I guess a 10 pound bag or something, I guess. They were like on for like $2.50. So she picked up a bunch of bags of soil and a bunch of these starter kits, and then a whole whack of assorted different seeds. So over the last couple of days, I've been watching YouTube videos on do-it-yourself gardens, and tips and tricks, and stuff and what to grow. And there's lots of information out there, and if you have access to the internet, which you should, since you'll be hearing me on this by one of the many media sources that the show comes on. Lots of things you can do, even with your recyclables too. They had lots of interesting ideas for growing tomatoes, potatoes. A big one is doing your chives, not chives, just things like onions, chives, garlic, dill, I guess aromatic plants, rosemary, parsley. You get the drift what I'm saying, all your spices, thyme, and all that. And something to do while you're stuck inside, if you're able to, when you're out grocery shopping, and in you're somewhere there, that if it's in the grocery store, or in the store that's right next door, or hardware store that's next door, while you're out for your weekly run to the store, maybe think about picking up some vegetable seeds and that. Like I think I did today. I did some beans, some peas, dill, squash, radishes, cucumbers, a real big one there. I did a pumpkin and large, put a couple seeds of that in there. What else did I do? I did some corn, carrots, lettuce, and just in a bunch of various sized potting containers and some leftover uh, containers as well. Tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, I planted those last week, and a little do-it-yourself kit for strawberries. And I think like the kits were, I think the strawberry kit was uh, a little bigger than say a soup bowl, I guess you would say, and I think it was like $2 or 2.50 at the store. And I don't know what the price would be in the states, or whether they're comparable or the same price. They're really cheap. Same with seeds and that. And then right now, and also at the hardware store, they had these uh, portable greenhouses, which was like a big stand-up dresser with a plastic with the shelves around it and it zippers up. So with all my starter little pallets that I had, I think they hold I guess about 24 little individual cups to start your seeds off with, and I got 4 levels of shelving there with racks on there to put all my stuff on there. So that was what I did there, is to start doing some planting for when it gets a little bit better, and I build a above ground uh, I guess a garden there in the back, because the backyard does have a large concrete pad. But if I build it up and do something like that, then transplant them after these things go to seed, I guess, whatever, or grow up enough that they be planted over and transferred to outside, and just things like that, like potatoes, lots of things to look for when you're out and shopping that are really cheap. And it's not just that I'm thinking that like I do I'm well aware that what I've started growing here, that this is not going to be ready till the end of the summer, coming into fall time. Some stuff like microgreens, those things grow really fast, and just stuff that, and they grow. It's like a chia head. They just keep on going and going and going. And so just stuff that you'd have around, and they don't take up that much space as well. I know when my mother had sent me a picture. She was growing a bunch of different microgreens and herbs and herb gardens. She had a little 4-tiered small plastic, I guess, stacking cabinet. It was really cheap. I think it was like $5 or $6, and just put all her stuff in there. And she's in a condo up on the 4th floor, and all she has a little deck out her door, and so she just has it inside by the window. And hers thing is like after 2 weeks, like it's like loaded right up. So just things to do like that, keep you busy, learn, get a green thumb, and then also you're growing fresh vegetables too, not that stuff that you're getting from the store. And who knows, maybe you might find a passion in doing that, and find other things to grow. One thing that I sort of was laughing at myself about was she picked up some asparagus, and I was like, oh great, this is going to be awesome, grow some asparagus. But then when I looked at it, that it takes like 3 to 4 years till you actually get a very good harvest. I think after the first year, you don't get really anything. And I think year 2, it's very minimal. Year 3, you get a pretty decent yield. So maybe my asparagus will be ready for the next big quarantine event that'll happen, because it seems to be happening. Is that if you look even from if you go from Y2K days, the turn of the century here, with the different viruses that have come out, and none of them have been to the effect of what we're getting here right now with this COVID-19, except for SARS. And there was a big scare for that when I was living in Toronto, and that affected quite a few people. And out of that, they ended up having a big, huge concert. Went to that concert. SARS Stock, it was called. They had AC/DC, the Rolling Stones, the Guess Who. And they had Justin Timberlake there, Rush, a whole bunch of bands that ran all day. Big, huge thing. About almost 750,000 people went to that, so that was a great thing. And who knows what we'll get, what sort of thing will happen here? Because what do you have for sports on TV? Nothing. I know on YouTube, if you're into the UFC and stuff like that, the UFC channel on YouTube, it doesn't cost you anything, but they're putting up and releasing everyday old fights and that, if you're interested in that. And there's a lot of old sporting events like YouTube, I guess, is a good way for do-it-yourselfers. There's everybody's out there to teach you how to do something and what it is. Like I got into another sort of interesting thing to pass the time, and with paracord, if you're looking on video and that, to make different little paracord things just to keep busy with stuff, and learn different things. Take lots of different learning channels that are on there to pick up, to do stuff and like help you with any sort of little craft you're doing. I know there was one there trying to do after winter time. There was knitting, but I don't think I have the fingers for it. But I was trying to make a face cloth, and I think I got about as far as about the first line, and then I gave up. So who knows? Maybe in another time, when I'll get back to that there as well. And also, if you're looking there, I picked up my guitar again, and I got two of them. I got an acoustic electric downstairs and this electric Fender, and I haven't been playing that much at all. So to get in with keeping busy and keeping just learning stuff, and that's the whole thing. Is it's funny is that when you're not stuck at home and forced to be at home, you actually think about it a lot more because you can't go anywhere. Like I'm not really doing too much different than what I was regularly doing besides working and that. But like even with time off and stuff like that, my day hasn't been too much changed in a way. This time of year, I probably would be going out to my family cottage and hanging out there and getting everything ready for this season or this summer season. But other than that, being at home, just watching things. So what have I been watching? The big buzz has been around there about this show on Netflix, Tiger King. Watch that one there, right straight through. That's a things that got all this time and don't have to worry about waking up to go anywhere tomorrow or the next day or any other day. So we end up binge watching. So I went through I think there was like eight episodes or 10 episodes of that. Watched that right through the whole thing, and that's been a real interesting, crazy story. And and you can see a lot of people have been talking to the people that did that documentary. And if you're aware of what that is, it's about the exotic animal trade, specifically tigers. Well, not actually the trade, but the people that have them, and a couple of them that have zoos. And it's a real interesting story. It's about basically one woman who wanted to dictate the rules. This is how I see it anyways. Dictate the rules about who should and shouldn't have tigers. And I think she believed that she should be the only one that had them, and her backstory, and how she got her money, and because she was in the trade of tigers beforehand. Then she went into this thing that she's saving them, and then she was going and chastising everybody else that had exotic animals, especially tigers, around the U.S., and trying to get legislation passed. And so she ends up having a feud with this other guy that has his own tiger zoo. Joe Exotic is his name. and he's a very colorful person. And I don't want to give too much away that's happened in the show if you haven't seen it, but a lot of things to sort of make you look at how people are and how they interact with other people and who makes rules for what. And that's sort of an interesting one to watch. So if you haven't seen it yet, and not that I'm sponsored by Netflix or anything in that, but that's where it is. It's on Netflix. So after I finished watching that interesting show, I went on to watching. Actually, Laura started watching, and I caught partway through. Then I went back to the beginning of season one, Making a Murderer, and it's an ongoing story. I'm not sure if they're going to be releasing a season 3 yet, but season one was pretty interesting. It's about Stephen Avery. Well, it's actually and his nephew Brendan Dassey, and it's all about this uh, murder. Well, actually, it's about two different parts. It's basically about Stephen Avery, who was a bit of a wild kid growing up. He gets accused and charged and sent to jail for the rape of a girl, and he ends up he swears that he didn't do it, and a bunch of stuff ends up happening during that there's been the police and and other government officials sort of didn't pass on information in a way. Excuse me. And finally, after 18 years, with new evidence, somebody else had gone and looked into the case and brought it back up again, and they were able to prove that it wasn't him. So he spent 18 years falsely accused of rape of this girl, and the people that there was people that actually knew and knew that it was him. And the way the court case sort of went, sort of weird. There's the way the spin goes on it is that there was information that was not passed along and withheld by the police and prosecution, and let him remain in jail. And the big thing, I guess, to remember about is that this is a small community county, and the people of the county really didn't like this family. Period. Because they had a junkyard and they were a little bit wild and stuff like that. So they weren't in the, I guess, looking at them. A lot of people didn't really care for them that much. So getting rid of them or getting them out of there or making their lives miserable was a key component, I guess you could say. That's the way I sort of look at it. So after he's released, after 18 years of being in jail, he decides he's going to sue the police force, sue the county, sue the state, whoever, for falsely accusing him. And there's different bills and laws and that were sort of were being put into effect. And I think it was going to be $46 million he was suing the county and state for. And so this is a lot of money, and a lot of key personnel would be, I guess, they the ball, so there'd be responsibility, because as we know, the dung always falls hill, always rolls downhill. So a lot of people were going to feel the brunt of this if this money ended up being paid out. So just before he's about to be paid out, I'm not sure if he was paid out partial or not. I can't remember the story, but this is more for you to watch too as well. A girl goes missing and he's charged with the murder of this other woman, so he's thrown back into jail. And if you follow along the story, there is sort of you have to sort of look at this is that this is one person telling a story. And like I always say on this show is always try and find as much information as you can. Look at it from different perspectives and different angles. And because this is just one person's view and telling of this story, it goes through and he's in jail, and also his not stepson, his nephew also is charged, and he's a little bit slow. His name's Brendan Dassey. He's I think it was 15 or 16, and he has the learning ability of say a 5-year-old, and it, you can take this however you want. His testimony uh, was uh, was made up. He just made things up, and there was a big pressure by police to have this Stephen Avery charged again. So, because the people that are in this one with this new charge for putting him in jail were also involved in the old charge, and we're also being looked at. So, I won't give too much more away of it. It brings you up to the end of season 2, brings you up to, I believe, 2018, 2019 with court cases pending and new information on the rise, and a lot of questions. And if you watch this, you'll be going like, why is people that are in power making decisions and sort of uh, it puts it almost into this whole point right now is about governments making decisions on behalf of everybody, and hopefully these things, restrictions and protocols, don't end up becoming a law, like that'll be a thing. So who knows? That's the thing that I've said before is that we always have to sort of see what things are happening and be aware of all of our situations that are going on. But anyways, this is another interesting one, which was the making a murderer, and like I said, season 3. Hopefully they come with that, but we'll see what happens. So other than watching a lot of Netflix and Amazon Prime is another one there. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I never ever cared for that app, and I'm not sure how Laura got that with something that I guess with buying stuff on Amazon that there was some deal, and I always looked at it and was never looked that interesting. It looked like it just had old movies and old TV shows on it, and the selection was very limited. And then actually I went into the search bar and just type in stuff like documentaries, and there's like 46,000 documentaries on there. And like now there's like, wow, there's a whole huge interest of stuff to go through. And then you can put in there comedies, and a lot of stuff is older stuff that that the other channels like Netflix don't offer, or like YouTube as well also has a movies that are available that you can watch too. And there's a lot of other sites there is on the internet, free TV sites and free movie sites that play older movies, and other channels that are playing other other media content to watch. So if you're bored and you got you don't feel like doing anything else, and there's lots of informative stuff out there, you can use your internet connection for a good thing. Like even with YouTube, with all their shadow banning and blocking of other truther channels and alternate media channels, there still is quite a bit out there, and you can also find them on your computer, on your laptop or iPad or whatever system of media that you're watching. And one good thing one thing that I actually really do enjoy, we have an Apple TV box, and I think there's other ones that are similar to that. Like I think there's a Google box. I think there's a Fire Stick where you can access apps, and if you have a newer TV, it plugs in through your HDMI cable, or if you want to plug your laptop into your newer TV, if you're out, pick yourself up a PCI cable, and if you notice on your laptop, you'll have, or even on your desktop, if you have that, you can get cables up to like 30 feet, 40 feet long if you want. Plugs into the side of your laptop, and then on the back of your TV, and then you just clone your computer onto your TV so you can watch it as a larger viewing surface instead of that little 15-inch or 13-inch or 17-inch screen that you have. And that's one thing that I got into using and a long time ago. Like I'll just quickly, if you're on video watching this, and just pop it onto there, and then you can see everything a lot bigger than off the big screen with sound and everything too. So we have an older one which is Apple TV 3, and there's newer ones, the 4s and that. You can purchase all this stuff on Amazon, and it can be shipped to you. Not saying that you have to or not, but it makes it a lot easier, even for, I notice with us, with me, Laura, and her son here, is that whatever, instead of looking all at the small little tiny little screen, you can look at all on the bigger screen. And you can, if you have an iPhone, like what I'm doing this show on here, my old iPhone 5. I guess I'm gonna have to start looking about updating my media hardware that I have, get something newer here, because even with the 5, they don't make any more iOSs for that anymore. And I think I'm coming close to the end of days that I'm actually going to be able to use this thing. So hopefully something I pick up something soon. There's the whole part about people with there's no jobs, no nothing. Businesses are clear heals all wounds, and that's another thing I've been doing is going through the cupboards. Like, we just recently moved, and a lot of stuff that just went right from boxes from one cupboard into a tote, and then right from the tote right back into the into a shelving unit or a cupboard space. So I went through and started going through some of the stuff I got for Christmas from years past that have dust on it, that are just been in there for a long time. So I found my beer make machine, and I've been making beer. So just something to do, and it takes whatever this machine. I had a whole bunch of packets too that hadn't expired, and I think it makes about 10 liters. So I guess that's about 2 gallons. I guess in the States, what is it? 3.78, 677, maybe 2.5 gallons Imperial. And so it makes almost about 10 liters metric, which works out to basically just over a case and a bit, and takes about 10 days. But just something to pass the time, keep busy, and I guess if I can't go to the liquor store to go pick up something, at least I have that sort of as a backup. And looking at other things there too, to ordering as well, picking up stuff to make homemade wine. Lots of different do-it-yourself stuff that you might think that you don't need, or maybe you really don't need, or just stuff that you'd like to do. There's lots of instructional videos. I've said before, like with this one, with this beer machine, it came as a kit, and I've looked, because you can order parts and that on online on Amazon or whatever type of shipping online service that you use, and pick up something like that if you have the spare cash or around. Like, not saying that these are mandatory things that you should do, but just interesting things to do. Like I said, I started a garden, or not a garden, but started the planting of seeds. So like I said, I started corn. I don't know where I'm gonna ever be able to plant 24 stalks of corn, but we'll see what happens. I just, more or less, it's sort of an experiment and a fun sort of thing for me to do, to keep busy and to see if these things actually grow. So like I said, I got lettuce growing, my asparagus. Well, that's for a long-term plan, but uh, I got chives, onions, potatoes and onions I'll do later on when it gets closer, when I can just do that straight outside. Carrots I got going, different types of leaf lettuce. I said beans, peas, uh, radishes, beets. I did a couple pumpkins. Those might be interesting to see if those go. I did dill, tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, and I'll look about probably maybe in the next couple of days if I pick up some other seeds to do that. And you can harvest some of your seeds if you have vegetables at home already. You can there's an interesting videos you can watch on there, just cutting up a regular tomato and using the seeds that are in there. And I'm not sure if the all those seeds grow, so that's the thing to look about, because a lot of stuff that is GMO'd, factory or synthetically sort of grown, all the seeds aren't actually stuff that will actually grow later on. But that's something to check out and play around with. What else did I get going there? Oh, red peppers, green peppers. I got chili peppers I want to do later on this week. And like I said, it's who knows? We don't know what the longevity of what this virus may be, and who knows if it's going to be a month or 2 months or substantially longer. But it also is a thing about looking about being prepared. And I did a show with Laura a few times there about preparedness back last year, just having certain items around. As you can see, what's happened today, not today, but or today's in the past few months, there was the big, huge toilet paper, I won't say fiasco, or toilet paper scare, that there was going to be no toilet paper and everybody was going out of toilet paper. And it was actually wondered about this question about who started this toilet paper craze where everybody went nut bar for toilet paper. If it was the news media that did it or it was social media. And I think where it started, if I look back into this, it was that a lot of people, or not a lot of people, a few social media sites had said if for preparedness is make sure to have toilet paper, and because if the stores close down, you'll run out. And then I think when the toilet paper was started running out at the stores, that's when the news media started reporting that there was toilet paper shortages. So then the people that weren't on a lot of social media sites or that end up seeing this toilet paper, no one's going to have toilet paper. Boom. So that caused more of a panic to go and get things. And then you saw stores just sell out of lots of staples, and staples meaning just regular items. So things that we picked up, or I noticed I pulled out of the old cupboard there, was the bread maker. So picked up some bread and yeast and just stuff, ingredients for that. Because at the store, loaves of bread were becoming hard to come by. So just to even have a loaf make one of those up every couple of days, have some bread in case we do run out of, go to the store, there's nothing there. And a lot of items at the stores have sort of been picked clean, depending on when you get there and depending when the truck comes in. And this is a part of a conspiracy that I can see sort of maybe happening if this ends up being a longer term predicament, because they're already talking about here in Ontario from the premier that supply chains have greatly been hampered. So you got to look about where you're getting your produce from. A lot of stuff for Canada comes in through the States or other countries as well. So those supply chains have sort of ceased to run at the measure that they are right now. So whatever was left in stock or warehouses hadn't been shipped out that had already been here, that stuff has been distributed out. And those, when the supply chain for that runs out, and then that means the supply chain to the consumer runs out. So these are sort of things that, this is why I got into this whole part about growing some vegetables and that. Like I said, there a lot of them won't be ready till like the late summer or fall time, but other things like quick and easy things like microgreens and onions and stuff that's really really easy to grow and grow really fast and that regenerates, like carrot tops. Like after you use a carrot, don't throw away the top stem. You could go and plant that somewhere else, and it'll probably take root and grow again. Lots of different things that you can do to recycle or to keep this uh, your own personal store of food there going and going. And this is what I've been sort of doing for the last few weeks. There is writing down in notebooks and just pages and pages of things and ideas to keep yourself busy, so you don't end up in that sort of that bored vegetative state where you just feel like you have a cabin fever. And like going outside is a great thing to do as long as it's out in your yard and you're not mixing with other people. Like I mentioned before a couple weeks ago, vitamin D you get from the sun, and you get that good sun rays there into you. That's good for just for your own personal health, getting fresh air, so you're not cooped up inside the house. And I know everybody doesn't exactly live in independent units. Like with mine, this is like a 5 units townhome sort of thing, all connected. And then there's another five, then another five, and then there's individual homes and apartment buildings as well. So if you can have the part to get out, to get some fresh air, get in the sun a little bit, and just be aware of your surroundings and remember about your social distancing, and be aware of what you're touching. That's a big thing. Like I probably on this, I've noticed as I've been looking back at the camera a few times where I've touched my face, and it's just a habit of doing things where you get an itch, and just always remember to keep on washing your hands and keeping clean, and I guess follow what's being passed out by your government in front of you there, so you don't end up getting a fine like here that they're looking about giving people now here in Ontario, and the snitches that are going to be reporting people for breaking these protocols or restrictions that have been put in place. So other than that, what have I got looking forward to coming up during this next week? Well, I wanted to get into a topic there. I haven't heard back from a person I like to have as a guest there to get into about a part about the inclusion of media, where it's sort of gone into, you're seeing it a lot with a lot of shows that are on TV where they've sort of changed the structure format, that it's been a little bit more into this alphabet sexual pro shows. I've noticed it a lot in the DC TV shows, like the Flash, Supergirl, Green Arrow, Batwoman, stuff. That's a lot of shows that are on the CW. They've sort of gone this sort of way where they've the original show, or even the original comic and the story or whatever was never like that, but this is the way they've sort of molded the new story to be into this sort of inclusion. But and you see this a lot even with movies and stuff like that, and other TV shows, where this shift in what the content of the show wasn't it's changed from the original stuff. And I've mentioned this too, is a part with history, on changing history and eliminating history. Maybe we'll look into a little bit like that, where they've taken books. I think it was Tom Sawyer or Huck Finn, because it had used a word, the N word in there, and it describes stuff as that those books are no longer acceptable in school anymore, but they allow LGBTQ drag queens to go in and teach kids uh, a version of something. So there's a lot of shift in what the dynamics are, and a lot of shift for what a very small percentage of the population of the earth is forcing in or demanding into the rest of society. So maybe stuff like that. But other than that, we got other things to look about on the part of Monopoly Apple. Dream Pie was another thing going into about the zeitgeist of society today. But those are topics to look about later on, and to look about. I think I was going to get into. I mentioned before about the religious equation and how it works in with government and with making global rules that affect us, the low person at the bottom of that pyramid, that where all the stuff runs downhill that we end up having to deal with, where you really don't have a say in it. You do sort of in a way, but you really actually don't. Your individual freedom is pretty much fleeting. It's just an illusion. But that's on for happier topics there. But all I want to say for the rest of you out there is stay safe, be aware of your surroundings. Take some of these things, look up, like I said, on your computer, on your YouTube, different ideas how you can watch on a long screen or a wide screen or a larger viewing surface, so that the rest of the house can watch what you're watching. Maybe you can watch an episode of this and look at this ugly mug there, stare at you, back at you on on your large screen TV. Wouldn't that be funny? But for that, I want to say goodnight to you all, and thank you for listening. And we'll see you next Monday. Good night.